Welcome, students, to the third episode of the Film Student Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Lazzaroni, and on today's show, I'm joined by Jehanne Junguenet from the Magenta Cohort. Jehanne and I talk name pronunciation, our mutual love of Aparna Nancherla, and our upcoming humorous nonfiction projects. On with the show.
You tripped me up, but this time I am stronger, and I won't go back.
Where's that name from?
It is French. My dad is French. He's born in France, came over here in the 80s, met my mom, and the rest is history. So, yeah. Charming
Otherwise known
French.
as Stop Asking.
Exactly.
I get that question all the time.
It's fine. He's a long history. Interesting.
Yeah, I get Anthony Lazzaroni, so
really?
I get the nice Italian name too.
Yeah.
But so what brought you here? What got you into Second City, into Harold Ramis? Why is this your spot?
Well, so my background is in film.
Mm-hmm.
I studied film in undergrad, then took a couple years, tried to figure out if I wanted to do other things, worked at community center, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it all came back to film. So I went back and did a year-long program as part of Boston University. I've lived in Boston for the last 10 years and did a digital filmmaking program, kind of 1 year, all hands-on, just to really refamiliarize myself. I graduated school in 2007, so between that 2007 and 2012, when I went back to school, a lot had changed in like the digital film space. So that 1 year program, get back in, and when I came out, I got an editing job in a post-production place, and
Nice.
then
What kind of stuff?
they were doing mostly commercial work.
Okay.
So
Anything I or the audience might have seen?
a lot of Toyota spots.
Okay.
That kind of, commercial films. There was one long program that they did. I did mostly post-production coordinating and some assistant editing work while I was there. But they did do this really cool intro for a show on Cinemax that used a lot of the episode intros they did, and it changes per episode, so it following the story.
Gotcha.
Which was really a cool experience to be part of and see that process come together. I think it was
Nice.
13 or so episodes over the course of the season, so that was pretty cool. And then from there, I went on to work at a small post-production place in Boston.
Okay.
And started off as an editor and then became senior editor there. And we did, again, a lot of, or differently, more corporate kind of branded content for companies, which was interesting work. But during that time period, I started to take improv classes at a place called Improv Boston.
Okay.
Went through their
I'm familiar.
and went through their year-long improv program, and actually, around the time I was finishing up that year-long program, my partner was looking for jobs in Chicago, and I thought, okay, well, what am I going to do when I'm in Chicago? And that was around the time that they started the school.
Nice.
So I thought, well, I like
Perfect.
improv. I'm kind of looking to pivot because I liked what I was doing with editing, but comedy was becoming more of a primary passion as well.
That was my thing for editing too. Is like I've tried doing some projects in the past for other people, and I think I'm just a little too much of a control freak to be able to deal with that.
Yeah.
Like I've done a couple projects, even comedy stuff for other people, and it's just I know one of the things we did here, we took a workshop on editing.
Yeah.
And I think you and I are like the most seasoned editors
Yeah, I
in
think
the
so.
room there. And she's showing some basic footage for us to work with, and the very like the second shot that I would want to show doesn't exist. Like they didn't get that coverage shot, and so I'm just driven nuts. Like every time I go to sit down and edit, I'm like, no, you're missing the close up.
Yeah.
I need this close up right here, and then I need the opposite, and they don't have them, and
like,
it's killing me.
How can I tailor this? Can I jerry rig this shot somehow with editing and make
Yes.
it look like the shot that I want, but it's just not there. Yeah.
It's not there, and that's the thing that drives me nuts. Like it's easier for me to beat myself up for having not recorded something that I should have gotten than it is for me to like just be screaming at the wall when somebody like leaves the thing out that I really
absolutely.
wanted there.
Yeah.
So no, I get that. Like wanting to be able to work on your own stuff and develop it out and actually see it from start to finish.
Absolutely.
What have you done much of your own stuff before this, or has it mostly just been for the corporate work that you've been doing?
I've done some short pieces. My final project for my when I went back to film school, I did a short parody commercial for a dating company called Spark Plugs. So
I need to see this.
yeah, it was a fun project, and it's kind of where I got a taste. I've always loved comedy. My mom was super into like female comedians. Gilda Radner was a name in our house
Nice.
since I could walk. My dad is a very funny guy. Loves all the kind of older French comedians, French directors that do comedy. So it was always part of our family. And when I did that sketch, it was kind of like, oh, I want to keep doing this kind of work.
Yeah.
And then the improv came back into it, and then it was just the school, and it was kind of this happy marriage of, I can take this thing I already love, working in video, and make it work with comedy too.
Yeah.
And that passion, that dream is now more of a reality. So it was an exciting idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing that pulled me in is I think I'm a big team person. I've played competitive rugby
You
for the
think you're a
past.
big team person.
Well, I know
You
I am
think it.
I know I am a big team person.
Little did she know. No.
But I've played competitive rugby for the last 15 years.
Nice.
So there's a tie that I saw between rugby and improv in that, the yes and is a huge thing in improv. In rugby, we say 15 as one.
Yeah.
You are not doing anything unless it's in the service of your teammates, and it's the same back and forth, and everything
Right.
has to serve this team goal, and that's more fun to me
Right.
than playing tennis or, I tried stand-up, but it was just kind of a solitary thing.
Yeah.
So came back to improv, sketch writing, and the great thing about
Improv's great if you want to get out of your shell, but are too afraid to do it in the form of like
Yep.
stand-up. Stand-up and improv, a lot of people think, well, it's comedy, it's all the same thing. No, they are two completely different things.
Yeah, and both involve great storytelling. Improv just lends itself. There's more that team catching you,
Right.
a little bit of that safety net to start, and then when you lose the safety net mentality, you have so much to work with and run with, which is really exciting.
That's cool. But why? So obviously because you moved here, this is the main spot for you. But why make the jump? So, and you're not late in life, but you're like me. It's late compared to others. I know it's. I'm 34, so it's a kind of a big push of my own just to be able to be like, I know I'm comfortable, I'm making a living, I'm doing well, to just kind of drop everything and go back to school.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 32, so this is it feels somehow, because society says like later in life, but I try to tell myself 35 is really young for someone to be a president, so I still have time to be young for
3 more
something.
years, you can still be president.
Exactly. Like someone, oh, he's too young, not enough experience, or she, eventually.
There you go.
It was just, kind of that drive to not believe I was too past the time to make this change. And as the kids say, YOLO, you get one chance.
As the kids say.
As the kids say. No, it's never too late to try something.
Yeah.
And, I'm also, if taking this plunge, it will lead to something else anyway. I kind of try to bring that mindset in of like every chance that you take will lead to something and lead to another chance. So it was too many things that were kind of coming together that interested me not to take this opportunity and try kind of just go see what it can bring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of stuff are you into? Like, what's your comedic taste or style, or who are your guys, so to speak, or girls?
Well, I'll never forget the first time I saw Waiting for Guffman.
Okay.
I thought that nothing had been funnier. Just to see that the kind of zaniness of that premise of the 150-year anniversary of some town in the middle of nowhere, and what they could pull from that. And then I had seen that before. I knew they all had kind of come from this ensemble background, and to know that existed, this idea of like a dream of making and creating humor and art with your friends, with people you're passionate about the same things with, and that it works and translates to people. And then seeing all the other Christopher Guest movies, Best in Show, Mighty Wind.
Which we get to watch Best in Show coming up for Gary's class.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, that is and that again, like in my house growing up, that was a quotable movie. My brother and I used to just talk in movie quotes, and my mom, as much as she liked comedy, would just eventually have to like slam on the table and be like, your father and I are here too. Like, you could talk to us. So yeah, that's kind of that. I love the mockumentary style, really, and so starting with the Christopher Guest movies, but how it's kind of come into the TV realm now too.
The Office and Parks and Rec. And even I don't know that they ever really treat it completely like a mockumentary, but even like Arrested Development kind of has that same feel of like the fly on the wall, like it's just a camera crew following around a bunch of real people.
That kind of like, instead of just the straight on interviews, this kind of cinema verite following this shared experience of this family. And those are things that that really draw me in. It's really like, I think, ensemble comedies where you see people working together. And that's kind of my jam. That's what I love. But all over the board, really, just general.
You mentioned you tried stand-up. What's the influences there?
Someone I'm really like right now is Aparna Nancherla.
I actually know Aparna.
Yeah, you said that. Yeah, and just the kind of dry wit and the idea of how open she is with some of her anxieties and her neuroses, but just making it really natural, and that's who she is. I remember, I think I told you this, she has this one line in her stand-up, something like, having anxiety is like having a bad improv group in your head that is getting endless suggestions, which I just think is such a perfect, as someone who deals with anxiety issues, like that is just perfect. That is what it is. And that kind of honesty and self-deprecation, that's honest and not just beating yourself down, but like, this is who I am. Yeah.
She does a show, it kills me, I can't remember the name, online with Joe Firestone, and the two of them just as like a sounding board for one another. Like they are each other's neurotic sounding board. It's just a ping pong back and forth.
One time I was at, a friend of mine worked at Radcliffe, which is the women's college of Harvard, and they have a series every year that does gender and something, and at that time it was gender and language, and I think Camera Esposito was supposed to be the opening act, but she ended up not being able to do it, so Aparna did it. We're on a first name basis now. And
I don't think anybody's going to be like confused when you say Aparna.
Exactly.
It's like with the other Aparnas that are popular right now. We're not good enough at getting people of color.
Exactly.
In pop culture.
So she opened, and that was the first time I'd seen her. I'd heard some of her stuff, but seen her, and just really smart, and knew her audience, that she's very smart, but she knew she was speaking to kind of a liberal Harvard audience, and kind of poking at that while also speaking to it. And Robin Young was the host, who is the NPR host, part of Aparna's thing was she talked about some internet lingo, and Robin Young just sounded she was like, saying it's lit or something like that, and just Aparna's face was yes, that's what they're saying. It was really smart and funny. So
she the first thing that I worked on when I moved to DC was a 48-hour film festival film with her old troupe Jinx there, and I just remember kind of the same thing, like they did an entire improvised film, and so they had the basic premise set up that it was like a dinner party, and these couples coming over, and so she and this guy Greg Tyndale were playing a couple together, and it's just basically Greg saying, I remember one of the scenes, Greg just saying like all the things that he loved and was interested in the room and that sort of thing, and Aparna just being, yeah, like there was just so much written on her face.
Yeah, exactly. Like you hear, hearing her is great, and then when you can see it together, and there's a very low key physical comedy to what she does too. Yeah, which is awesome as well.
Well, and I love the kind of understated like comedians like Stephen Wright or Mitch Hedberg. Kind of going down that path, and I feel like she can go that path, but she's a little bit more conversational in the delivery.
There are times where you don't realize she's coming into a one-liner, and you're like, it sounds like a conversation, and then she hits this note, and you're like,
and then just walks away from
exactly.
it. Exactly.
Just drops it, leaves it. Yeah.
So were you trying to do the same sort of thing when you were doing stand-up, or was it?
Stand-up was a thing. I think I was just trying to challenge myself in terms of writing.
Mm-hmm.
I've spent a lot of time on the back end with editing and being part of that story
Mm-hmm.
and trying to really create. So trying to tell some stories. I think I did a couple open mics. I remember one of my bits was just about so my name is spelled really weird, has
Mm-hmm.
lots of letters, and it's French and both first and last, and just telling a story of how I was always that kid in class when you had the substitute would come in and they'd
Yeah.
look down the list and you'd eventually get to the names and be like Johnson, Johansson,
Mhm.
and there's that dead pause. And I just kind of let them sit for a second, but I knew it was me because they were like, they couldn't, at first I would see them see the last name, couldn't pronounce it, and then they had no recourse. Usually it's like, oh, Emily.
And they make that J shape
Yeah.
with their mouth, like
They
they're
start
about
to
to say
sound
it,
it
but
out.
don't know how to.
And then I'm just really like, oh, that's my name. That's me. So
I was just talking to somebody else about this today. For mine, it was always my last name rhymes with my first name. It's Tony Lazzaroni.
Yeah.
And people would just try and dive away from the rhyme.
Yeah.
It's kind of an obvious one.
Yeah.
Like it's my last name's kind of spelled phonetically
Yeah.
if you were to pronounce it out. And so people will randomly get it right, but other people will just try
Mm-hmm.
like hell to not make it rhyme.
Yeah.
Like they'll add other vowels that aren't in there into the name. I'm like, you're making
yeah.
it harder on
It's
yourself.
like, where did you get that? And sometimes, so my last name is Junguenet, a lot of letters. But the ways that people written on envelopes would just insert like a Q at the
Yeah.
beginning where there's no Q anywhere, or there's some letter that doesn't exist
But there's
near
Q's
the
in
name.
French, so you
But
just
yeah.
have to add it in every name.
Exactly.
It's the silent Q.
It's a silent
That's-
Q, yeah. Just like every other letter in French. You want to pronounce that? No.
You think
Yeah.
that letter is actually there. It's not there.
Yeah.
But the letters that aren't there, they're definitely there.
Yeah.
You have to read between the lines.
Yeah.
Otherwise known as the letters within a French statement. So your dad is French, originally moved first generation in the U.S. Or
Yeah, my dad, he is, short story of my parents, my dad was a he used to drive rally car in France.
Oh, awesome.
And then he ended that career right around the same time as he met my mom, who was a wallpaper designer, had gone over to France. They met in France.
Mm-hmm.
Then eventually had to move back to the U.S. For my mom's job. My brother was born. They moved back. And then he started a wine importing business.
Oh,
and
nice.
that's his. And then my brother works with them.
Gotcha. Importing from France. I
From
would
France,
assume.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. So, and my dad is also a root of my comedy interest too. Is French? There's a big history of wordplay.
Mm-hmm.
Wordplay is huge. Just kind of twisting a phrase, and my dad is a king of it in French and in English as well. So I love puns. I know it's considered dad humor, but I love a good pun. I make them all the time. I said at my last job when they started on chat, it was harder for me not to make them than to make, I was like, Jan, hold back. You can't do that this early. It's too soon.
It's sad because I got the same thing. So my old improv coach for my Herald team in DC
Yeah.
hated puns, absolutely despised them.
Yeah.
And literally some of the notes I would get after shows sometimes were like, it was great right up until you did the pun.
Yeah.
And I was like, he said puns are basically you mugging to the audience verbally, because you're basically
Yeah.
turning and saying, look at how smart I am.
Yeah.
And I sort of get that, but in the same breath, no, it's just wordplay. It's not.
Yeah, it's like you understand it's hard to hang your hat on stage, but
Yeah.
I'll never not love them.
Yeah.
I'll never turn away from them.
What's
'cause-
your what's a favorite?
Well, one I recently told, I was at a holiday party,
Yeah.
and I was in the kitchen, and I entered in the other room, and I said, "Oh, look, the snack table, all aboard the snack train, choo choo." Which I think got a pretty good response from the crowd there. Lots of groans. I think groans, if you're talking about puns, are as positive as a laugh sometimes.
Groans mean they still get it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's bad if you get no reaction.
Yeah.
Like a pun with no reaction is just it just sounds like you don't know
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
choo choo.
So that's my dad is French. It was funny when I started playing rugby in college, and before that I had played soccer in middle school, And then he said, oh, no, it's too violent and you'll never be able to get a group of people when you're older play tennis. I played tennis in high school, hated it, quit. And then I started playing rugby. He was like, oh, yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I was like, this is 10 times more violent than soccer. But cultural connection. So, yeah. I mean, and I didn't speak French till I was 14.
Oh, really?
He spoke all the time to us. I just think we didn't have that many people around us that spoke. All of my life was English. I always understood. And then I started speaking at 14. And I think I knew that I was really starting to become fluent when I could understand humor and do humor in another language, which was a kind of a cool connection to have and understand a different nuance, trying to meet those beats, hit those jokes in a different language.
Have you ever seen Eddie Izzard?
Yeah.
Where he does, I think it was Dressed to Kill or Glorious, one of the two, but he did it both in English and in French for the same set, which is insane to get that to work with the wordplay and just the comedic beats and that sort of thing.
He talks about I think I've seen him talk about it on shows, and he's like, he'll do the same joke in different languages and it has to hit a different beat in each language, but the humor throughout relates.
The throughput, it's that same kind of underpinning, which is, it's interesting because it is, if you're doing the wordplay, obviously that has to change up from language to language, but you can still keep the underlying premise, and that's somewhat universal for people.
I think it's kind of why humor is such a universal language. You know, I think they talk about here in story writing, unique is universal. Everyone has a different experience in different countries, different cultures are different, but like the human experience, not to get too philosophical, but like human experience is shared.
Get philosophical.
And you understand, you know, I'm not, maybe that wasn't the right word, but you know, we're all human, one under one, I don't know, umbrella, but it's so cool to see humor relate through cultures, even without language, you know? So.
Yeah. So what are you looking forward to here? Like, what projects are you working on now, and what's coming down the pipe that you're excited about?
I'm excited for, I really love the improv class, just to create and kind of bond with classmates that way. Right now we're starting to work on our short doc or nonfiction film. So I've decided to document myself trying to use one of those bullet journals.
Okay. What's a bullet journal?
So it's like those blank journals and they have dots on them. It's like you can create your own journal on your planner and make it the way you want. And I try to pretend I like to be organized, but I'm super scatterbrained. So I've tried many planners and they don't work. And I was
seeing insane.
Seeing how this works, but it drives it like causes almost a panic as well, like the blank page like that. It's like, there's so many options. I'm like, which do I choose? I don't know. So seeing if I can hack it and stick with it and if it'll change my life, and we'll see if that happens.
What sort of change are you trying to get out of it?
Or a more structured organizational planning.
Happening.
Yeah, I know. I don't know, who knows? I use my phone a lot, but I don't like being on my phone a lot. So trying to figure out a paper way that like be less rooted
required
to the phone, and then having everything in one place. Who knows? We'll see.
I went the whole hook, line, and sinker. I've got now the laptop, desktop, iPad, phone, all connected together. So if I add a note on one, it shows up on everything else.
That's smart.
Well, it sounds that way, but then every now and then, like, something doesn't sync, and I drive myself kind of nuts. Like, all right, where did I put that note?
The cloud is very intriguing, but also kind of frightening. I am personally like an emotional hoarder. Like I have a lot of things. I have knickknacks. I call it organized clutter, but the cloud simultaneously is so convenient. But what if it just goes away?
Yeah.
Then it's like my fear of losing tangible things, and there's air out there that's my information is in, and it could just go away.
There's a Werner Herzog movie on Netflix right now about the internet, and you know I read the synopsis on there, trying to choose which one to watch, and it's like, oh, it's about the history of the internet. I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And it's a Werner Herzog film, which should have been my first hint that it goes dark. Like you see like they show like the first switch, and they have this 20-minute interview with this guy talking about like the first internet switch and how those machines like communicated back and forth. And there's not a whole lot of graphics or anything. It's really just a guy on screen the whole time, and like some close-ups of this machine. but he's got it divided up into these acts, and so the screen goes black, and this white text shows up, and it's like Act 1 and Act 2.
Yeah.
And he winds up talking about this girl who I don't know if she committed suicide or something like that, but like photos of her body getting out across the internet and how that ruined her family, and talking about if the internet went down from a solar flare or something like that, how much of the human population would die within like 3 weeks.
Oh, holy crap! Yeah.
It's just very very dark, and I have to believe we could get away with still living.
I think so. Hunting and gathering still happen.
Yeah. Enough people are out there that could probably switch their food supply methods.
Yeah, I think so. There's still, those, what do they call them, preppers? They'd be ready. We just follow
doomsday preppers.
Doomsday preppers. Yeah. We just follow them.
They've got the bunkers with all the canned food and everything like that. Oh,
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and some of that's not even necessarily doomsday, but like I'm not from, but I lived in Oklahoma for a number of years. So they have a lot of like tornado shelters, either basements or actual like building structures. Like my brother-in-law and sister have one in their garage.
Oh, wow.
That is like this steel building that's bolted to the concrete, which goes down like a certain number of feet so that it can't be moved.
Wow.
And it's got like a door that latches behind them, and they've got food and water and all the essentials in there. So it's like a panic room. Yeah. But it's in the garage specifically because that's where the least amount of stuff that would like hit it and cause damage would be.
Oh my God.
It's designed to go in there and let the whole house like blow up around it.
Wow. Have you seen that movie? Is it Cloverfield with why am I blanking on his name? The husband from Roseanne.
John Goodman.
Yeah.
10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yeah, 10 Cloverfield Lane. That's it.
I haven't. I need to see it. I want to see that because I also have to watch Cloverfield Paradox now.
Yeah.
That's on, and I feel like they're sequential. I saw Cloverfield.
Yeah. It was okay. The movie was an interesting concept, I think, but personally, just I was like not floored by the movie as a whole, but I just, for some reason, I'm scared of most things, but living underground is an intriguing idea. Yeah. I like to see what that could look like. And
somehow that was also the most annoying thing I've ever seen TJ Miller. Yeah. That character, I was like, oh my God, shut up. Yeah. I like him in most stuff. He was great on Silicon Valley, but like.
I love that show. Yeah. Yeah.
Although now he's going to be off.
I know.
Did you hear about like the whole more or less he kind of quit in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
Like,
and then so like
shitty.
He's not going to be back next season. Yeah.
They basically written him out, but they didn't kill him off. They left him alive. He's just like in Tibet.
Oh, wow.
And
I guess it makes sense for the character to do something like that.
It does, but it's also it's a dynamic that's going to be completely missing from that show. Yeah. So I'm interested to see if they find some sort of way to replace that. Yeah. Supposedly like the Gavin character is going to become like a bigger deal. And I don't know. We'll see what happens. Yeah. But well, any final thoughts for anybody? So this is ostensibly going to be a podcast about following my experience here and talking to the people that I'm meeting and working with here. But a lot of people that'll hopefully be listening to this are interested in either this school specifically or even just film school in general and trying to make the decision. Any final thoughts for those people?
I think, one of the things I was just excited about because my career was mostly, the creation was mostly in my job, my day-to-day job. The idea of just constant creation and having that opportunity to take that jump and do that here and collaborate with people. So it's an exciting move. And I think that's kind of the idea of just constantly creating, pushing your limits, pushing your boundaries.
Always have that next thing lined up
exactly.
to get done.
Yeah, and to go for it. It's never, there's no too old.
Yeah.
I think, it's
that there's never the perfect time other than right now.
Yeah, exactly. And as long as you work for it and grind, it doesn't matter. So just go for something. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me.
Now I'm gonna move on and I'm never looking back. I thought and tried to hide and keep these memories in the past, but I'm better off without you. It was never gonna.
That was Jehanne Junguenet. Thank you to Jehanne and to the Harold Ramis Film School and Second City staff for their help. The song on this week's episode was Take Care, the newest release from my friends in Party Like It's, available now on iTunes and Google Play. And be sure to check out the awesome music video for Take Care on YouTube by my buddy Taylor Morden. If you want to hear more from me and my classmates, teachers, and a few special guests, make sure to subscribe to the podcast. If you have questions or comments, send us an email at filmstudentpod@gmail.com or find us on Twitter and Instagram at filmstudentpod. We'll be launching filmstudentpod.com in the coming weeks, where I'll post photos, links, and samples of the work I and my classmates are producing for all of you to enjoy. See you all next week. Class dismissed.